You're live, Chair.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, meeting as the Crime and Disorder Committee on the 29th of February 2024. My name is Councillor Simon Morgan and I am the Chairperson of this committee. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Could I ask members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the cameras and the live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. So, item 2 on the agenda, apologies for absence. May I have apologies for absence, please?
We haven't received any apologies for absence.
Right, thank you.
Very much.
Okay, thank you. Next item, sorry.
Chairman, can I have it noted that I'm in attendance, please? Councillor Stamp.
Yes, of course. I was going to give you a special welcome.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Don't jump the gun. Minutes. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October 2023 are approved as a true and accurate record. I so moved. Have a seconder? Councillor Spenceley. Is that approved? Thank you. Progress sent. Good, right. Next item 4, declarations of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded they're also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware should the need arise through the meeting. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, moving on, I've been advised that there will be no submissions have been made for public participation. So, members, welcome. It's we more or less have a just about full house. And welcome, Councillor Stamp. Good to see you here. Thank you very much. As I say, we will obviously ensure that it's noted that your presence is with us. Right, so moving on to agenda item 6, the Maldon District Community Safety Partnership update. And I believe, Spencer, you're going to take this through. So.
Thank you, Chair. As agreed at the last meeting, rather than going through the presentation in detail, I've got a few slides instead. What I will do, hopefully members have had an opportunity to read the report in advance, so if there are any questions on that, we can perhaps take them after the presentation, Chair. Yeah. What I will do initially is to update you on where we are with the strategic needs assessment for this year. It will be presented to the Responsible Authorities Group in 2 weeks' time. That's where it will get formally agreed and endorsed for what will be happening in the following financial year. Just to give you an idea of how we go through that process, as a partnership, we sit down and score what's called a crime risk matrix, and we look at offences of the highest concern. We did this for Maldon District, and in order, the highest concern offences were domestic abuse, high and medium risk, rape, trafficking of drugs, robbery, and dwelling burglary. So when we looked at it from the actual risk and concerns, they're the things that flag up. However, taking those into account, it's likely that we'll be putting forward the similar priorities as what we've had for the last 2 years, because I think most of those crime types fit into those priorities. But so that will be the role of the Responsible Authorities Group, which is chaired by Chief Inspector Ballard, and I vice chair that group for that particular group to agree those. So that's the headline there. That will be 2 weeks away before that's agreed formally. Just to remind you, what I'll do now is I've got some slides up there, and as I've done for the last meeting, I've done a headline slide for each priority just to show you where we are on all of the areas. So Chief Inspector Ballard's going to run this for me very kindly of him. So if we can go on to the first slide. You can see that I've done the slides today here because that is actually the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioners meeting from today. You'll see Roger Hurst there, who opened up the meeting this morning at Boreham House. Somewhere in the middle there between Roger and the MP for Southend East. You'll see me hiding in the middle there. So I was one of the keynote speakers at the meeting today on antisocial behaviour. So I'd done a double act with the Deputy Chief Constable, Andy Prophet, who gave a national view of antisocial behaviour, and I gave a bit of local context as to what we've been doing in both Maldon and Chelmsford District. The conference was really good, and later on you'll see a couple of images from the conference. So if we can move on to the next slide, Paul. So this is just what we've been doing around our first priority. This priority is This priority is around tackling crime and reducing reoffending. And I'm not going to duplicate anything which Mr. Ballard's going to speak about, because I know the community policing team, the town team and the local policing team have been doing lots of work around serious violence. What I did speak about at the October meeting is by the end of January, which we're in February now, Essex had a duty to complete what's called a joint strategic needs assessment for serious violence. So that was a new statutory duty that came in last year. I'm pleased to confirm that that was completed, and we had some local Maldon input for that. What I actually do receive now on a monthly basis on the Power BI platform are the data for the whole of Essex. We can then break it down into ward level for Maldon, so we can see if and when there's any hotspots for Maldon, and we can consider any interventions we need to put in place. A word of reassurance: serious violence in Maldon is very low. I think we're the lowest district in Essex. So when I talk about a hotspot in Maldon, it's usually 2 offences a year, whereas for somewhere like Chelmsford, where I look after, Molsham and Central, the city centre, will have something like about 27 offences a year. So it just gives you a sort of rough idea of how low serious violence is in Maldon. For the October meeting, I believe the Deputy Chief Constable, Mr. Prophet, is going to come along and present on serious violence and the duty and the work of the Essex Violence and Vulnerability Unit. One of the headline figures at the conference today is that serious violence is down by 12% across the whole of Essex, which is good news. Some of the other things we've been looking at, had a really good conversation with Crime Stoppers today at the conference, and we've agreed to look at doing a Crime Stoppers zone in Tolsbury. So that's something we're going to be moving on in the next couple of months. That will be, I think, the first Crime Stoppers zone they've had in Essex. As usual, I put my hand up and said we'd be happy to do it in Maldon District, because I think it would be a good thing to do. Another thing which might be worth a consideration in Maldon District is, I know I spoke at the last meeting about community payback and probation services. They're doing an opportunity starting in March to do spring cleans in areas. So I think if there's any areas which members think would be worthy of a spring clean for community payback, please speak to me after the meeting, and I'll be more than happy to put those areas forward. Again, we've been continuing with the effective engagement with communities, either face-to-face or by social media. If we can move on to the next slide, please, Paul. So the next area which we're going to focus on is antisocial behaviour in public places. And as I said, what we're trying to do is speak to as many people as possible. So last week we were in the Maldon Town Hall with our community safety focus. Had various officers from the Community Safety Partnership, from Community Policing Team, Fire, and many other from the NHS talking to members of the public. So that was quite well attended. What we've also been doing is patrolling a lot of our hotspots. And I was at a meeting on Tuesday afternoon where we've been talking about OpDial, and OpDial is the pilot which was held in 6 areas across Essex last year at very short notice. I think the PFCC's office had about 7 days to put forward a plan. They've been notified that there will be £1.6 million for OpDial and OpGrip for the forthcoming financial year. And I am pushing to see whether we can get some funding for Maldon. So whilst the ASB figures do not really support interactions such as what we've had in other areas, I did stress in the meeting that we do get seasonal problems, particularly in places like Burnham Riverside Park, Maldon Promenade, and various hotspots around the district. So it's one area I'm going to be pushing to see if we can get an element of funding for hotspot patrolling. And when I talk about hotspot patrolling, the one we've done in Chelmsford this year, it's sort of been a 50-50 split between additional hours by police officers and additional hours by accredited officers. So people like the community safety team and the community engagement team. And I think that would be a real bonus if we can influence some funding around that. Still working on effective case management, and there's been a couple of cases where we've gone over to the Police Commissioner's Restorative Justice and Mediation team. Sometimes it's really difficult to resolve neighbour disputes. And I actually spoke about it at the conference today about this Maldon case, but not in detail. Whilst the mediation didn't exactly work how we wanted it to, it certainly made a difference to what was happening at that locality. So sometimes even if people don't agree to talk, things go quiet for a while because they've had that open conversation with trained mediators. So again, we're trying to use that as much as we can. And still looking at the number of diversionary activities for young people, although it tends to be a little bit quieter this time of year. We've agreed we'll do another skate jam in the summer. Hopefully we'll be able to do one in both Maldon and Burnham this year. So that would be good. So on to the next slide, please. The next area I'm going to pick up on is identifying and supporting vulnerable people. The top line's a bit of a narrative. It's a bit of a catch-all, this, but we're fully aware of the issues which we challenged by in Maldon. You saw that domestic abuse as a crime type was a concern for all agencies. Only today I was talking about Rick Hilton, who's the Chief Fire Officer, was talking about data and going back to 2022 where there was 9 fatalities in Essex and 3 of those were in Maldon District. And any work we can do around social isolation and speaking with those members of the public, because most of those, I think all 3 of those victims were older persons who were socially isolated in private homes. So when I go back to what we did earlier last year, knocking on 1,500 doors and having those conversations with people, having those referrals, having those home fire checks, really important piece of work. Today's event was really good because one of the activities I was talking to at the expo at the conference, and I've got it up on the screen later, so I won't show it to you. That was about driving with confidence, and I actually thought when the lady came up to me and gave me this leaflet, it's a free course for drivers 70 plus. I thought, oh, you're targeting me here, but it seems like a fantastic initiative, and it's a project where it's a free course for drivers who are aged 70, and it's about increasing the confidence of dealing with today's traffic sort of issues. You know, so it might be things like helping with night driving, negotiating roundabouts, and a lot of older persons suffered quite a lot of anxiety during the pandemic and haven't really come back to the same sort of driving levels. So I absolutely love this project, and I said to him, when we do our older persons event in October, the ladies agreed to come along and do presentations on that. So I think that's something which we can really pick up on. Finally, on that bottom that slide, VORG, that's violence against women and girls. You'll be aware that we're successful in getting some funding from the police commissioner, and we'll be kicking on with these projects soon, particularly the Women's Safety Project. But the Make Space for Girls project, we've initially piloted the first one in Chelmsford. The second one will be Maldon Promenade. That's usually in my role I get to deal with the unpleasant jobs, but working with the charity Make Space for Girls has been fantastic. So just to give you a little overview of what that's about, and again, I spoke at the conference about this today, it's about providing safer and more inclusive spaces for teenage girls. So if you look at their annual report, it's got a great opening headline. It's that most local authorities spend more money on the provision of dog poo bins than they do for specific projects for teenage girls, because most of the things that we do are designed default male. So take a skate park, take a Mooga pitch, urban basketball court. They're not designed for boys, but 85% of those users are boys, teenage boys. So we've finished the first session when we worked with 12 year nines from the Boswell School in Springfield. And it's been absolutely amazing, the work and the ideas they've been coming up with. And what we hope that's going to be a blueprint for Essex going forward. So the next stage we'll be doing is the Maldon Promenade project, where I'm hoping that a local secondary school based in Maldon will be signing up for that. And it's been so good, because you just I can't think about what teenage girls want from a green space. But when you look at some of our prime sites, whether it's Burnham Riverside or whether it's Maldon Prom, it's, getting to that space safely, what they want. They tend to, judging from what we've been doing, they love seating, they love swings, giant swings for teenage girls. These are the sort of things they're coming up with, but also some of the artistic ideas they're coming up around urban graffiti art projects, lighting, lighting, CCTV, they want to feel safe. And what I will is I'll extend, for those who are interested, I'll extend the invite when they do the final presentation in Chelmsford to the group, because it might give members an idea of what we want from the Maldon project, but it's always good to do a pilot somewhere else first. Okay, Paul, on to the next slide, thank you. The other priority is around rural crime and how we're doing work around the rural crime strategy. At the last overview and scrutiny meeting, which I had in Maldon in Chelmsford a couple of weeks ago, we had a presentation from the Essex County Traveller Unit, which was really, really good. So members might want to consider the team coming along and doing a presentation to Maldon at a future meeting, because when you look at the performance of the team and the massive reduction in unauthorised encampments across Essex. I think it'd be a really interesting subject to look at. Our team, our community engagement team, and when you look at fly tipping incidents, you'll see there for quarter 1, 2 and 3, that's probably our biggest area of concern. 296 fly tipping incidents for the first 3 quarters of this financial year. And again, last week we also done a lot of work around OPFUME, where we're working with other agencies to look at waste carrier licences. And I know there's two potential prosecutions from the work we were doing last week, which are currently being looked at. Other areas we work with closely with the Rural Engagement Team and the Environment Agency, and Leaf and the team, Lee Williams for the team, attends the Farm Watch meetings to make sure that we're getting up to speed with what's happening in local communities, particularly on the Dengie Peninsula. That's a copy of the leaflet, Driving with Confidence. So I really like that area. One of the other chaps I spoke to is a chap who drives that lovely fire bike. Amazing machine that is. And I had a very long conversation with the need for the Dengie and the Lower Burnham Road, and he said he's a regular patroller of that area, particularly on Sunday mornings, which gave me a lot of reassurance. So actually going along to these exhibitions and talking to people who are actually at the front end and doing these types of initiatives is really good. The police ones next to it were also really good, but the fire bike looked a lot brighter, so I took a photo of that one. So that's just to reassure you that there are lots of initiatives going on in our district, and working hard to try and reduce some of the issues we experience. Final slide, and I'm not going to say too much on this because I've got someone who's much more of an expert than me sitting next to me. But the conference today, we had a lot of attention around Vision Zero and the reduction of trying to reduce casualties on the road. Absolutely. I mean, as I say, I'm not going to say too much of it because Adam, Mr. Pipe, is the expert. But when you hear that the number of fatalities on the road and the number of seriously injured on the road compared to things like serious violence far outweighs things like serious violence. So that's why we need to pay, and that's why we always have that priority in Maldon, because being a rural isolated district with bendy roads, it's an issue. So the work of as you're probably aware, we were the first CSP in Essex, probably the country, to do true cam and laser cam. So we have 2 units now. You'll see the captures we've had from April to the end of December, 2,341 captures. So still doing, this is work over and above what's done by the police and the Safer Essex Roads Partnership. Still pushing on things like Community Speed Watch. And as I said, had some really good conversations today with lots of practitioners around how we can improve safety. And there's lots of education available out there. My final comment there is tomorrow we are meeting at Maldon Fire Station with the station manager, Howard Midwood, and Mr. Pipe, and some of our officers to have a good discussion on the Lower Burnham Road. This come up at our last Responsible Authorities group meeting. It's a concern. So as a partnership, we're going to take something forward and see what we can actually do to tackle the amount of casualties and incidents on the Lower Burnham Road. So that's something we're really looking to address in this coming financial year. And I think that's my final slide. I think the other one just says for information. So
right, thank you, Spencer. Before I sort of throw it open, there's a couple of acronyms. VVU,
Violence and Vulnerability Unit.
Right,
Sorry, Chair.
And is it JSNA?
A Joint Strategic Needs Assessment.
Fine.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Apologies there, members.
That's all right. As long as we get there. Also, I noticed sort of the thing that sort of leapt out at me was that in Essex, antisocial behaviour is down by 38.5%, and by an extraordinary 51.5% in Maldon. What do you? I haven't sort of noticed an outbreak of good manners going on. So what is it that's caused it?
So, and again, we spoke about this at the conference today because Mr. Prophet, the Deputy Chief Constable, gave an overview of the national figures. The other area which has done really well around antisocial behaviour is Southend, but that's a little bit more of a sore point with us because Southend benefited from Op Union during the May to September, but it also meant an abstraction from a number of staff from the Maldon and Chelmsford area to help support that. So I did actually last autumn have a long conversation with the Deputy Chief Constable about, please do not do that this year, and I think they're putting new plans in place for this year for how they're going to support Op Union. Yeah. Yes, antisocial behaviour has gone down. It's certainly gone down since the days of when the pandemic ended, when everything was happening. I don't think we've seen the same level of reduction in council antisocial behaviour. So things like environmental crime and fly tipping hasn't gone down. But like I said today at the conference, it's important that the right agency deals with antisocial behaviour. So in the past, the police might have got reports of noise. Well, police can't do anything about noise. It's the local authority's role to deal with noise. And sometimes we have to consider who the best agency is to deal with antisocial behaviour. And sometimes it might be the registered social landlord, because there's nothing worse than the perpetrator saying, we're going to take your house away if you don't behave, because they'll have a tenancy agreement. So there has been a reduction in antisocial behaviour, certainly in terms of youth antisocial behaviour for Maldon District. I think there's certainly had been a year-on-year reduction. So, you know, from a practitioner's point of view, and I'm sure Mr. Ballard will agree, we don't seem to get the same levels of youth antisocial behaviour, and perhaps it's a number of interventions that we put in place to try and reduce that. So if we see a hotspot, being able to work with those young people, people like the youth service being able to work with young people is also really important.
Thank you. Members, have anyone any questions? Councillor Morley.
Yes, thank you. It might seem fairly obvious, but what's the difference between medium risk abuse and standard? What's the definition of the two? How would you define it roughly? It's probably quite obvious, but
Do you know what? I might have to pass over to my policing colleague who might be able to give a better description of that.
the medium is up and all the others are down. I just, out of interest, how you define it really roughly.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll explain why one's gone up and one's gone down shortly. But in definition terms, a standard risk is one where, whilst there's a domestic incident or a domestic crime that's been reported, the risk factors based on the risk assessment that's conducted with the victim is that there's no risk of potential harm or future harm as a result of it. So it's a low-level risk type crime or ongoing issue. The reason why there's been a slight change in the medium and standard is because in August, Essex Police, as part of our ongoing improvement programme around how we treat and deal with victims, moved across to a different risk assessment model. I won't go into the anachronisms, but essentially the model that we moved across slightly changed how we risk assessed our domestic abuse incidents and crimes, so that more investigations and incidents were graded as medium that would have previously been graded as standard. So what you'll see there is one of the significant reasons why mediums have gone up and standards have gone down is because as of August last year, that there was that change in the process.
Yeah, go on.
Also, while you're on vehicles as well, are you aware of the scam at the moment that's going about when you're selling a vehicle and a couple of people arrive while they're looking around it with you, one's under the bonnet, this happened to my son last week, and apparently the RAC have issued a warning about it. It's rife apparently, and then they put oil in the coolant, which they then point it out obviously, and bid you way, way lower than the value of the car. It happened to us, and luckily we spotted it because I knew the vehicle was fine, and we had it checked and it was perfect. And it was a diesel car, and I could smell it was engine oil in the, petrol engine oil in the coolant. Are you aware of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that is a tactic that we're aware of. There's also similar tactics where they would distract the seller and pour oil underneath the engine block on the pavement or the floor so that it looks like it's got a leak, loosen the spark plug so that the vehicle has issues turning over. There are a number of different tactics, and the advice that I would give, and it sounds like obviously you did that anyway, which was obviously very, very beneficial, is that if you are selling a vehicle that someone's coming to inspect, at no point do you take your eyes off of your own vehicle and what everyone's doing around it. And if you can, and you've got the ability to, if you've got multiple people that turn up to sell your vehicle, obviously try and have someone there that's related to you or a friend that you trust that can also assist you in how that transaction takes place. But what I would say is the overwhelming majority of transactions that happen of that nature are perfectly legitimate and go off without any issues. But yeah, that is a tactic that we are aware of and is historically something that's been used. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Councillor Leal?
This is probably going to get passed across as well, to be fair. Looking at the figures for Maldon, obviously the burglary and residential dwelling figures have massively increased. I represent Tillingham Ward, so Bradwell, Ashington, Dengie and Tillingham. Over Christmas and New Year, there was a spate of house burglaries. Obviously, I understand there's always an increase over that time of year that there is house burglaries and that kind of thing. The fear of crime in Bradwell has actually increased massively. To quote someone else, it's pitchforks and firebrands at the moment in Bradwell. There has been a new community WhatsApp group that's been reporting issues of people walking around the village that look slightly suspicious, and New Year's Eve there was a report there was going to be a rave down at the power station, and people were ready to go out and park their cars in the street to stop people coming down. And it's a real issue out our way. There's lots of elderly residents about. Obviously, we're quite rural. There's lots of people living out on single tract farms and that kind of thing. I've asked for the community support guys to come out and try and do something and try and do a road show or just give some confidence back to the people of Tillingham. We've been offered some times during the day which don't really help most people, so I'm really just asking, can you guys do something for us? We need to get this back on track. I know you guys are out a lot, especially in Bradwell with the coastal guys, and doing a lot of work. But we just need to do a little bit more of reassurance of people that the burglaries that have happened, they've been using the field system to get in and get out. Drones have been used, that kind of thing. So it is quite a concern for the people out there. And I'm concerned that an ordinary resident will actually pick up their pitchfork and firebrand and something else will happen. And it is a big concern.
Who wants to go with them?
Shall I go first, Paul? So, yes, most certainly we can come and do some work. Just to give you an example of how fluid we can be, members might recall the Cold Norton series of burglaries which we had a couple of months ago, and we very quickly set up a meeting. So Rosie, who's a community safety engagement officer, and Scott, I think they had about 50 or 60 local residents in the village hall, and that was about 5 days after the burglaries, and there was about, I think, 8 burglaries, wasn't in a very short space of time. So yes, unfortunately the impact of a burglary in a rural area is much greater than what it is in an urban area. As you quite rightly said, people live down single track roads. So yes, we can certainly talk after the meeting, but I'll hand over to the Chief Inspector, who might want to make a comment as well.
Thank you, Spencer. You kind of took away a lot of the things that I was going to say there. But yeah, but no, I mean, in direct answer to your question, Councillor, absolutely. If we've got issues around public reassurance and fear of crime and not feeling safe, then we can absolutely deal with that. And that's something that myself and Spencer will definitely facilitate to happen. So more than happy to discuss that. And similar to Spencer's assertion around, the impact of crime, particularly those in more rural communities, whilst the impact on the specific victim is exactly the same, because wherever they live, a victim of a burglary is going to feel the same, but the impact on the community is sometimes felt more in those closer knit, more isolated communities, and we are conscious of that. Maldon, unlike most other districts in Essex and also nationally, is seeing an increase in certain crime types due to certain factors that are sometimes driven by things that are wider than just Essex and Maldon, particularly those that involve inquisitive crime. Obviously, burglary is up in Maldon, residential burglary. I mean, the numbers are still relatively low in comparison to other areas, but that's not to say that we should be complacent about that and that there is an increase. So we will absolutely always respond with those sort of issues and investigate the crimes, but similarly provide that reassurance. So more than happy to discuss that. That's not a problem at all.
With regards to this rise in domestic burglary, is that sort of generally spread across the district, or are there particular areas that are more affected than others?
You'll find that in general terms, the more larger urban areas are going to have the higher volume as they've got the higher number of houses, and there have been, like Spencer has alluded to, some patches where there's been an increase in a short space of time and then moved on to another area. There isn't one more adversely disproportionately affected area than any other. But yeah, it's not something that necessarily we would say, oh yeah, no, it's only happening here or it's only happening here.
Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Chair. So I can see the shoplifting figures have risen, and I certainly know from residents who I know who work on the Blackwater Retail Park, for example, that a number of the shops there are having quite a serious problem. I was actually in one of the stores myself when I witnessed somebody in the act of taking a very large number of coats from a row and screamed thief at the top of my voice, because this person, it was a horrible moment because they saw that I'd seen them and they went no like this quite threateningly. It was a man, and I shouted. But what really worried me was that a number of female staff ran out. Almost wished I hadn't shouted it. Ran out after the person who'd taken the items. Now, having spoken to a number of shops there since, they are suffering that problem. I don't know where these people are coming from, but it doesn't seem that it's just because people are hard up. It's large numbers of the same items, so they're obviously selling them on. And I was just really worried, I think, for the potential safety as well of the shop staff. So it was just a question, seeing that we've had this rise, are you working with the shop staff to give them advice on a place like that? I mean, are you aware, first of all, that estate is being targeted in the way that it is at the retail park there? And are you working with the shop staff to try to make sure that their safety is optimised, is my first question. Thank you.
So, as the Chief Inspector said, shoplifting, there has been a rise in shoplifting across the whole of Essex. Some of it could be associated with the cost of living crisis when you see the smaller shops being items like food and meat being stolen. But this is slightly more opportunist if they're taking coats off of rails. We do see that mirrored in Chelmsford as well. A lot of the high-end value stuff, clothing, perfumes, etc. I think there could be an opportunity here to do some work with the retail park. Some of the initiatives we could look at would be perhaps the provision of CCTV. The police commissioner did mention at the conference today that there's going to be a further £2.6 million available in the next financial year for bids to the Safer Streets Fund. So perhaps we could work with the retail park and see if we can do some collaboration on that. Yes. So, but I think what we could also do is perhaps send the business crime team from Essex Police down there. They go to most areas they're asked to, and they give some really sound advice around business crime. But as you quite rightly said, there's some risks there. If you've got females running out chasing shoplifters, they might not be. If they're not proper security staff, you can look at things like vicarious liability. If they were to fall over and get hurt, they might not necessarily be covered by their particular shop. So if you've got some contacts, we'd be more than welcome to take that up and do some further work with the retail park.
No, thank you. Sorry.
If I could just add one point, Chair, if that's okay?
Yes, please.
So one of the other things to consider with shoplifting, and it's something that's mirrored in other districts in Essex, that sometimes the increase isn't all negative. And by that I mean that my team and I know colleagues from other departments in Essex Police have worked really hard to improve our relationships with business partners and local businesses so that they feel more confident in reporting matters like shoplifting to us. So actually there can be an indication that some increase, I'm not suggesting all of it is positive, but some increase in reporting is positive in the fact that those relationships are improved and are getting better. And I'd also like to say that whilst it's not as high as I would like, because I always want better than we have at the moment, we should always be looking to improve. The solved rate for shoplifting is actually going up as well in Maldon, so we're solving more than we were. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Siddle-Norman.
Thank you. I have two questions actually. The first one is about probation services, and I actually was involved some years about being a person that is available at the time they come to look to make sure what they do. Do they still do gardening? We used them quite a considerable amount in Burnham, and we have places where we could use them do they have somebody in charge of them, or do I, as I used to then, have to be the person in charge of them? It was difficult. Just that's the first question. The second question is this. At the same time, we were lucky enough, through your funding, to provide tables and seats on our country park in Burnham. In fact, we have several, it's right by the sports centre. Now, the reason we got those was that I personally went out every Friday night for about 4 or 5 weeks in the summer and spoke to 70 young people on the park, asking them what would help them. And that's how we got those, and we got the money through you, about 11,000. Now, one of the things that I'm quite concerned about is that we actually put a great big notice up on our country park explaining that the young people had actually gone out of their way to provide and tell us what we wanted, and that has disappeared, but I'll have to deal with that through Maldon. The other thing is this, with your problems with young girls. One of the problems that they said was, which I totally agreed with them. They said, you adults don't realise that young people do need places to sit down, just like elderly people. We need seats so that when we get dressed up on a Friday night, that we don't get grass all over our feet and our clothes. So that's how we got that. Do you still give that sort of money? And have you gone down the road of concentrating on women? Because men kick a ball around and do all the things they do and they enjoy it, but women don't have that. Well, lots of them do now, but they didn't then. We need to go down the road of concentrating on what women need or young girls need. Thank you.
So I'll take the first question first about community payback. I think that probably the best thing I can do is speak with you after the meeting about the area you're considering. Beth Lunn, who works for probation, she's the person who leads on the community payback work. I'm sure she'd be very pleased to look at any particular areas you want to consider. So I can refer that directly to probation. I'm not sure whether I should imagine there's an element of supervision. There usually is when they look at the risk, but they'll do a full risk assessment first. So I'll refer that one to probation. In terms of seating, yeah, I'm championing this piece of work. You know, I'm in full agreement of understanding the needs of young people and doing that consultation. And I think this piece of work we're doing with the charity Make Space for Girls, which is also involves a couple of ladies from the London School of Economics who have done some quite bespoke projects. One of the ones they've done is in Brenton near Wembley. And I'll probably try and remember to send you the links to some of the pieces of work they've done. And it is really talking with teenage girls and seeing what they want and what that area makes them feel safe. Seating is a big thing. I mean, we've had 6 weeks with them now. Seating's coming up big. So yeah.
Can I just come in there?
Yeah.
Another thing, and I don't think that men realise it, toilets. Men don't have that problem. But however, women do. And quite honestly, they have more than just the fact that they need the toilets for certain reasons. And there isn't enough in our open spaces. And when they are there, they shut them at 5 o'clock at night. So and that's not the police's fault. We've got to look at that in the future. Thank you.
I can only agree with that comment. But I think it's something we can take away and consider, though.
Come on, Hayward.
I was just going to come on from, obviously, what's been said about this. I think the thing with the young girls, whenever you see a congregation of teenagers in the park, everyone automatically thinks they're doing something wrong. So no matter if it's girls or boys or whatever it is, so if you give seating in the park and they're all hanging around out there, they must be doing drugs, they must be drinking, they must be doing this, and they all get given the wrong vibe, and the residents have got to learn that the youngsters need to go somewhere. Now, I run a youth club, all right, that's where I've come from tonight, and youngsters need to go somewhere, you know, and you need to give them something, but you've got to try and educate the older residents as well, that they're not just hanging around the park or wherever to cause trouble. That's it, really.
Sorry, I've just I've got another question related to the report. There are a couple of little questions actually, so if you can bear with me, I won't take too long. So on page 12, 3.1.6, you refer to Martin's Law. And it just occurred to me, it was when I was reading this through, not for the pre-agenda meeting, but since then it occurred to me really that that's going to be quite a big potential impact, I suspect, because I wondered how much of an impact you think it'll be, for example, on events at the prom, and, you know, thinking about it as a district councillor, how that'll impact things like the fireworks, which are run by a charitable organisation. And how you're going to sort of help to work with them. And the other very quick question I had, so I'll ask them both at once, was on page 13, looking at 3.2.3, and you did mention it in the presentation, the money that you have for the Women's Safety Project, and whether there were any ideas how that would be spent specifically as yet. Just those two questions, really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spenceley. So Martin's Law, it's been a long time coming, this. So this is the protect duty. We expect the detailed guidance to be released in spring. So this is the sort of the what has been looked at from the Manchester inquest, which was probably 5 years ago now. So in terms of, once that detailed guidance comes out, we'll look at what it means to us as a district council. With regards to large-scale events, I actually met 2 weeks ago with one of the counter-terrorism managers from Bedfordshire for police, because Bedford covers the whole area. It covers Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire. And the counter-terrorism security advisor for our area, who has agreed to come down and do a survey of Maldon Promenade. That will involve doing what we do, looking at hostile vehicle mitigation measures. So we're hoping that will be done around about April time. So it will put us in good stead because as we're fully aware that will, whilst the duty will probably fall upon the event organiser, because there'll be over 800 persons at the event, up to about 10,000 in some cases, we are the landowner. So we need to pay due consideration to that. So that is in the pipeline. The detailed guidance comes out hopefully in spring. The other area we spoke about was women's safety. So the likelihood that will be is we will have what's called a women's safety charter for Maldon District, similar to the one which we put in place in Chelmsford about 18 months ago. And what we did with the Chelmsford project was did some filming in the local area. I think it works if it's in the local area because people relate to it a lot more. Not trying to reinvent the wheel, because if it worked well in Chelmsford, and we've done the social media campaign twice to support that, which was really well received, that's what we'll look at for Maldon District as well. But I think what we need to be aware of is, rather than it just focusing on an urban city centre, I want this to be a district-wide project. That's important, I think. So we're just starting to do some of the work with schools in Chelmsford. So I think schools will play a big role in that. Perhaps parish councils as well as the town councils as well we can do some work with, but making it district-wise I think really important for Maldon.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Stamp.
Chair, does any of the members want to speak though? Because obviously I'm a guest. Okay, thank you. I've got a few questions, if that's all right. You mentioned, Spencer, that there's we can look in detail where the spikes are for any crime. So is there a website? Because I'd certainly be interested in where the spikes are in Burnham, Southminster, etc., etc. So if that can be shared with members, I think it'd be really helpful, because I'm sure you know where the website is and it would take us all ages. So that's the first question or point. Reporting crime. You often find, or my inbox gets full sometimes, of people who are frustrated by ringing, and forgive me if I get it wrong, is it 101 use or 111? One's health and one's police, so whichever one it is, 101, so forgive me. And I'll give you an example of one particular crime that I've had a resident or an operative ring me on many, many occasions, and it's theft from skips. Now, when you have a skip on your drive, and it can be people that have got elderly relatives or, you know, bungalows or whatever, and I have had it reported that they're a white van or whatever sort of van you want to call it, going round early in the mornings, and they're taking things out of skips. Now, this can cause the homeowner, especially elderly relatives, they're concerned that A, they're entering their premises or on their land without permission, and they don't feel they can challenge. This has been witnessed on more than, well, a few occasions, and the person who is a licensed person to pick the skips up has rang 101 on numerous occasions. I've gone through Maldon District to try and get some help, and I've got absolutely nowhere. But the point is, the person is now, because 101 has turned around and said, don't keep reporting it, there's nothing we can do. But the thing is, it's an actual crime. Now, if you're, or whoever, is not allowing people to report crime, your crime statistics are going to reduce. It's common, because people are not going to ring up anymore, because they're not going to get anywhere. We've had this before over many years about the feeling, what's the point in reporting it to the police? They don't do anything anyway. So I think we still might have a little bit of work, as far as I'm concerned, with the messages and emails I get in my inbox or private messages. So I'd like a response on that, about the reporting system, if possible. The other one that I'd like to actually ask for some more information on, and I was really pleased to hear about the social isolation work that you're carrying out. So can you tell me a little bit more that once you've identified somebody, because we know this is a problem in Bradwell, Tillingham, and especially for women who live in social isolation, depression, whatever, mental health issues come on, and they can be left isolated for a long time. So can you tell me the process after you've identified that that person fits in that category? What then happens to them? So I'd be interested to know what police or which authorities, which other agencies come in to support them. And finally, Mr. Pipe, I'm really interested. Is this the point I can say this about traffic, or are we moving on to traffic later on? I'll wait. Thank you. That's enough. Thank you very much.
Who wants to? Go
So, in terms of the mapping tools for crime, I think we can refer to the Essex Police website, which has some of the mapping information. What I was specifically talking about was serious violence, which comes to me as a Power BI data pack. I'm not allowed to share that, but I can share with you where the hotspots are for the district. Similarly with things like the Project Minerva mapping around adult female victimisation, I can share where there's any issues. To be honest, there's not many hotspots in Maldon district for those areas of work, but there may, even when we looked at antisocial behaviour on Tuesday afternoon, there's no real hotspots in Maldon district at the moment, which the crime analyst has come up with, but there's stuff which is published on the website. Paul, do you want to take the 101 question? Because that's a little bit out of my area. And then we'll revert back to social isolation, if that's okay.
Thank you. So in relation to 101, there are obviously a number of ways to report crime to Essex Police, inclusive of 101, and we've diversified into online and the chat function as well, and to try and reach as wide a part of the community as possible. From the question and the detail that you provided, it's potentially, is it the issue that they're reporting it via 101, but then they're getting advised by 101 that we're not going to record a crime? Right, okay. So the very specific example that you use in relation to the theft from skips, obviously without knowing the specific circumstances, there are occasions when that would be recorded as a crime. We are governed by the Home Office crime recording standards, which is the same for every force. And additionally, we're also governed by the case law through the courts that has grown over the years in relation to various different offences, including the Theft Act from 1968, in relation to what are offences and what aren't. The skip one is a challenging one because depending on the circumstances, property is no longer can be stolen if all rights and ownership of it has been abandoned by virtue of it being disposed of. So there are challenges in relation to that. Now I'll see you look at me quizzically, but that's the relevant case law. But what I'm not going to sit here and say is on the circumstances as you've been advised of via email, that is or isn't, because obviously it is very much dependent on the specific circumstances of each one that's reported to us. But what I can say is that every report that we get of an incident, whether it be a crime or otherwise, it does go through the same process of trying to identify exactly what the circumstances of that are and whether or not we are required under the Home Office crime recording standards to record it as a crime. If we are, we do record it.
I think my main concern is it could also lead, if you're going on somebody's premises, and they usually they're not just in ones, they're usually in twos and threes, getting out of a van, going on checking skips that are on people's private driveways, and it's very unnerving if you're an elderly person in that house, you don't know if they're checking out or casing the joint. So, you know, for the person who has reported that alleged crime or crime, which however it sits in the 1968 Act or Home Office or whoever is agreeing whether it's a crime or not, as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't even be on that premises taking things out of skips. I thought there was a law against that, so forgive me, you're the expert, which you know is absolutely fine. But you can't have people going on private premises removing stuff. It's theft. So, you know, and if that gentleman or lady, whoever reports it, they're feeling vulnerable. And I know you can't be in lots of different places, but if you are, you know, if it's an ongoing issue and the registration plate has been reported, the picture of the van has been given, and the picture of the possible alleged people, or you know, people that may be carrying it out, they really should be, whether it be a low priority or what. If there's more than one, it's a pattern. And what they do when they can get away with pinching out of skips, they move on to another street. I know it's happened in Burnham on many numerous occasions, but I take on board what you've said. But Chairman, I also wanted to ask the question if, are you still going into schools and teaching the kiddies? Because we've used a lot of our Essex County Council money to go into workshops in schools. But there are issues that children need to know more about the school. When I was at school, you had the bobbies and the coppers coming in, and they would do a talk and a presentation that frightened the out of you to make you understand that this is not acceptable behaviour. So you didn't say a lot about going into schools in the presentation. So when you've answered the other questions, if you can tell us how much you are going into schools and the uptake, and I would say come to Burnham a lot more. All we ever hear is you're going in Maldon a lot. You can have surgeries and you come into Ormiston School where there may be some issues. It'd be beneficial to everybody if it wasn't always at the Plume School and it wasn't always Maldon centric. There are, you know, there's 67,000 residents and they don't all live in Maldon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the social isolation one first, if that's okay, and how we, using the example of how we did the work with the fire service last May is probably a good example. So we looked at the fire services cluster mapping data, and what we really wanted to focus on was individuals who lived in their own homes. Because if you live in a social housing property, they have a duty to have a wired smoke alarm in that particular property. So we're focusing more on the sort of 60 plus community whose children have left home and hadn't got round to fitting a smoke alarm type thing. So it's each one's on a case by case basis. I know when we done the work in Burnham a couple of years ago, it was very much considering what the issue was. So if they needed something like a stair rail, we'd speak to the social landlord or another agencies to give that sort of help. We would refer to whoever the appropriate agency was. So if it was for dementia care, if it was doctors, you know, help around motivation, etc. We do a lot of work with the farming community. The CBS do loads of work around suicide prevention with the farming community. One area which I'd like to try and do some work on in this coming year, and again it's duplicating a piece of work we've done in Chelmsford. We've done a really successful project called On Your Team, and it's been very much around men's mental health. 16 men working with the team, doing things like football and badminton, and the positive results we've had from men who have been socially isolated or now have a WhatsApp group to speak to each other if there's something wrong. So I know it's a bit of a all about answer, but there is sort of no one size fits all. We'll just refer to the appropriate agency there. Going back to school work, I mean, we always and have always, ever since I've been in Maldon for 12 odd years, whatever it is, we always tend to focus our education on year 6, because year 6 is that transition year before they go into secondary education. The last 3 years we've done it in the form of an interactive professional drama. This year we're going back to face-to-face delivery with agencies. So we think that gives, you know, it was very much too much to focus on violence and vulnerability. I think getting back to some of the basics which we do, things like road safety, which is really important, and going back to the sort of face-to-face delivery. So we'll continue to do that. I will hand over to Mr. Ballard because I know his team do loads of work in schools across the whole district.
Yeah, thank you. And it actually forms part of my presentation around some of the work that we do in primary schools. So, yeah, I have community safety engagement officers as well as other members of the community policing team that work in the Maldon district. And we do regularly go into different schools, and it's not just schools within the Maldon town. It's across the district entirely. And I actually had, coincidentally, I was communicating with a Burnham resident via email recently around some of the activity that we've had in Burnham, not specifically just for schools, but in general terms. And we've had 6 separate community engagement events, with more coming in the next few months. And in fact, it'll be on the slide later, but I'll ruin the surprise now. Our Chief Constable was out on patrol with my team in Burnham on the 8th. So we are regularly across the district. It's not just focused entirely on Maldon, and that's across the broad spectrum of what we do. We do go to all the different areas. I mean, I was out with a team last week, and I think I pretty much did a very nice scenic tour of the Maldon district. It was very nice, looking for people that are up to no good. So we do get out there, and we do engage a lot more with schools. We're very conscious as an organisation that post-COVID, we needed to get back into primary schools. Secondary schools, the provision for the education in secondary schools is largely provided by the PFCC to the fire service, but primary schools, we utilise our resourcing to go in and speak with the children and teachers and deliver the inputs that they ask for.
I think if we could move on to Chief Inspector Ballard has made his introduced his report, so perhaps we can go on and take your report, Chief Inspector. Is it good? Second?
Yeah, we need to move the recommendation first, Chair.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yes, of course.
Sorry, I was a bit slow there, but on page 19, looking at the force-wide figures, there's a domestic abuse figures there, and there's something about risk assessments, and there seem to be a lot that don't have a risk assessment, which surprised me really, and I wonder if somebody could explain a bit more about that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I can explain that, if you'll allow me, Chair. Yeah. Where you'll find that there's no risk assessment, so there are times when we record multiple recorded offences for one particular incident. So there might be a domestic abuse incident where we've got a violent offence like an assault, but we've also got a report from the victim of a historic harassment or a coercive and controlling behaviour or stalking. Because of the Home Office crime recording standards, we have to record those separately. So what you'll find is that the primary offence that we're investigating, we investigate all of it, but we have to create 2 crime records. So the first record will have the risk assessment attached. The second record doesn't always necessarily have it. So that's why you'll find some records without a risk assessment. It's not because one hasn't been conducted, it's because it's not on a master record, it's on an ancillary record.
Sorry, Councillor Lawman, you have a question?
The problem as I see it is that in fact there's, if you go into schools now, I mean, it was a bit of a long time ago when I was at primary school, the policemen had a hat. They were very recognised as being policemen, and we really thought that they were really important, which they are. But we knew that by their attire. Do you go into the schools in that way, or do you just take these drama situations into the schools?
I can't speak for Spencer, but I don't think your team have a uniform. But I can assure you that when the police officers and police staff, PCSOs, go into schools, we are in uniform, as you would remember it.
Well, the thing is, it's very important, I think, that youngsters are aware that they're really important people and that they're on their side.
Okay, members. Well, we have a recommendation. Members review and comment on the current progress of the initiatives undertaken by the partnership to date. Can I confirm that you concur? Good. In which case, then, we can move on to agenda item 7 and the police report from Chief Inspector Ballard.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you, Chair. I'm very conscious of time, so I will obviously provide the information as we go through. But this presentation is to give you a bit of an overview of some of the activity and notable factors in relation to the police in Maldon within the last 6 months to a year. So I'll go through the slides. There'll be some information on there, of course, questions you have in relation to them, although we have covered, I suspect, a reasonable number of them already. So just to give you a bit of an overview, the community policing team for the Maldon district and Chelmsford district it's got one inspector, which is Mr. Samuel Girdlestone, who some of you may have communicated with previously. In addition to the Maldon town team, which has got Sergeant Matt Dalby, 6 PCs and 1 PCSO, there's the community support, policing team also that works out of Chelmsford, not Maldon, but does cover Maldon as well, and supports. So both of my teams are able to be flexible in regards to what they do to maximise what we can and can't do in regards to the Maldon district. In addition to those, Maldon has its own community safety engagement officer, and their role is multifaceted, but predominantly they are there to identify and coordinate the response to any emerging issues within communities and ensure that the community the community policing team are engaging with the residents and communities appropriately. There you've got me, so I'm the district commander for Chelmsford and Maldon. In addition to the community policing team, you also have a local policing team, which is a response team working just downstairs every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And they work within the Maldon district, responding to emergency incidents and investigating crime on a daily basis. What you have there, I appreciate it's relatively small for those at the back. That's the Essex Police Force Plan that all of Essex Police is working towards, and you'll see there that the main plan and the force directive is around helping people, keeping people safe, catching criminals. We've got our main efforts around the 4 Vs, which are victims, violence, vulnerability and visibility. And then we've got the priority offences, albeit, as I say, that doesn't mean we don't investigate the other ones. Just these are the ones that have been prioritised. And that is very much around the strand of looking to prevent those crimes and crime from taking place, responding appropriately when crimes are reported to us, and then investigating those crimes appropriately. We also work towards the 12 policing priorities of the PFCC's office. There is broadly a lot of alignment in regards to that and the force plan. You'll notice there's a couple of additional ones in there, but in general terms, the PFCC's office and the Chief Constable work very closely together in regards to their plans and how they set the priorities and the direction for the force throughout the period of which those are in place. Now, what we have here is the public perception survey. So Essex Police for a number of years now has engaged with a private company which is also employed by other police forces as well to do a public perception survey in the various districts within Essex. And that is by virtue of asking a sample number of residents within those districts some pertinent questions and then recording the responses. So you'll see there a bit of a time graph of where we sit within the Maldon district over the last sort of 5 to 6 years. You will also notice, I'm sure, those keen-eyed among you, where we were in COVID and not, because, as I say, it was uniformly seen across Essex and nationally, confidence in policing increased quite significantly during the COVID period. And what we have had since COVID is a return, in the most part, not all completely, but in the most part to where we were previous to that period in time. But what I can say is that for the Maldon district, you'll see that the various questions and the percentages there, we are either above or at the force average. So in general terms, the perception survey results for Maldon are positive from a policing perspective. We're certainly not complacent, and we always look to try and improve on our confidence of our community in policing. But in the most part, people are confident in us and the response they will get from us. I'll just leave this slide there for a little bit. As you can see, the results there. And as I say, the general context behind those are that Maldon is performing well as a district in regards to public perception. In regards to crime and ASB performance, the next slide will list it. I appreciate it. It's a lot of information on there. So in general terms, crime in Maldon is down as of January this year by 194 offences, which is a 5.3% reduction, which is above the force average. And has been alluded to already by the Chair and others, that antisocial behaviour reports is down by 51.1% in the calendar year compared to the year before. We have seen an increase in dwelling burglaries, as we've spoken about already, and then theft-related offences have seen an overall reduction. However, we have had increases in both shoplifting and some vehicle crime types. Here you'll see that in visual form. As I say, I appreciate that that's relatively small, and some people may not be able to make out anything specific, but that just generally gives you a bit of an overview. Other things of note, violence with injury offences are down 7.2%, violence without injury is down 14.0%, domestic abuse offences I don't think are on there. No, they're on a different one. But you can see there just the general overview of where we sit as a district. And as alluded to previously, Maldon, with the exception of Stansted Airport, which is its own district for the purposes of crime recording, has got the lowest volume crime recorded figures in Essex of all the districts that we have. This, I appreciate, is a little bit small, so I do apologise in advance. I wasn't aware that it was going to be such a challenge for you to see. But this is just a bit of an overview around some of the things that we've been doing in order to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour, as well as some of the community issues. So in general terms, the aforementioned work in Cold Norton Village in regards to dwelling burglaries is mentioned, and that bottom left picture is that village meeting with residents there. We've also been doing some specific work in Purley in regards to Let's Talk sessions, and also we've been working with colleagues from the Essex Fraud Prevention Coordinator in regards to some potential fraud and scams. So you'll see there's quite a bit of significant information, and as I alluded to before, there's a picture on the bottom right of my Chief Constable of Essex Police on patrol with the Maldon Town team within the district on the 8th of February, where we went to lots of different places. One of the other things that we're doing, and I know that Adam will probably talk about some of the stuff that his team do in support of us, because there is more than just us that work in the district. There's, Essex Police is a large organisation with a number of different departments that all support each other, and we're really grateful for the support we get in Maldon from our colleagues in Roads Policing and the Operational Policing Command. But from a local perspective, in addition to the work that Spencer alluded to earlier from the engagement officers and the TrueCam and LaserCam, Essex Police Speed Enforcement have been active from the local policing team and community policing team in regards to enforcement around drivers and areas of hotspots where we've got concerns. We've had ourselves, just us on our own, not inclusive of the figures that Spencer's already mentioned, 112 drivers in the county caught exceeding various limits and engaged with in order to stop that ongoing behaviour. And we also, as you said before, we work with the Safer Essex Roads Partnership to give school children the opportunity to learn around the danger around speeding drivers. And you can see some pictures there of some children doing that work with us on the slide. From another engagement perspective, you'll see there, and in relation to the questions previously, there's at least 3 of those pictures are us in schools with school children, and some of the engagements that we've done, particularly with our children and young persons officers and the community safety engagement officers, is going into schools across the whole district to talk about a whole wide range of issues that they feel that we should discuss with them, and how we can potentially support them in their education around children and safety. We also organise an event every year in regards to people over the age of 60, where we offer crime and prevention advice, and also how we can support with their care and other issues in partnership with the CSP and colleagues from the council. So we've got a wide range of different types of engagement events across the community in various different locations. Addition to that, we work with our rural engagement team in regards to our more rural isolated communities in regards to a specific issue. and we talk about there where we've got 2 stolen quad bikes that were found and seized, as well as some other work where we do with the National Farmers Union and some liaison that we do with there. And then we've got reference to, as Spencer's already alluded, fly tipping through Op Fume and hair coursing through Op Galileo, which I'll come to on in the next slide. So hair coursing in Essex has dropped by half in the last year. And a lot of that is through the work of colleagues from the rural engagement team who've got specialist equipment and experience in regards to dealing with those matters. In the last 12 months to February 24, the control room within Essex has received 173 reports of hair coursing, with 6 of those located within the Chelmsford and Maldon districts. With the work done to support the communities and deter criminality, that's seen a 15% reduction in regards to reports of hair coursing when compared to the previous 12 months. And then this is some of the work that the town centre team have done, specifically in relation to drug possession, drug supply and organised criminal gangs in the Maldon district. Some headline figures, we've had 22 vehicles seized, over £20,000 of cash seized, cannabis cultivations to the value of nearly £500,000, and then over 100 wraps of Class A drugs, and you'll see some pictures there. We've also had 20 convictions of individuals for these type of offences that amounted to over 27 cumulative years in custody across those convictions. And then again, reference to the fact that through our policing initiatives and how we've worked, it's assisted in reducing violent crime within the district by 7.2% in regards to violence with injuries. So some really strong work from the town centre team there in regards to that.
Right, thank you, Chief Inspector. So, any questions, members? Councillor Hayward.
Happy to go first. You know which one it's going to be, don't you?
I might do.
Speeding. Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm in Mayland. I'm the Mayland ward, so I'm St Lawrence, Steeple, Mayland. St Lawrence, I know your team have obviously been out there, and you've had and it was a good meeting. Obviously, it's well appreciated by the residents, but things still need to be sorted now. Mayland, we don't have the community police officers out in Mayland. The parish council don't pay for it at the moment, so we don't get the true cam. But Steeple do. We've got our own community speed watch, which Mayland's got it. Steeple have also, and they're doing it between the 2 parish councils. But we need more police out there with doing for the speeding. You know, it's all right us doing the community police, but you know, we had to make that decision. We wasn't getting quite what we wanted from them, so they weren't actually targeting the areas we needed to be targeted. We've got a 40-mile-an-hour limit road at the top of our road, which really should be 30. Steeple's 30. Everyone goes through at 30. You know, they go 40, 50 miles an hour along that top road. It's an accident rate. Well, we've had numerous accidents on our top road. So really, I think as coming out onto the Dengie, I think we do get forgotten a little bit. Not by lots of different services. People do come out to us, but I think we need a little bit more presence out our way to try and, I don't know when did you last go out, or when did someone last come out and actually do speed watch on any of our roads? Because our community speed watch has been going up there, but we haven't seen anyone else doing anything. And you know, it's always there on presence. Someone on Facebook says, oh, there's a camera. Well, I've not even seen that being said, so I don't think we've had anyone out. So is this something you can do for us? Because we are in problems.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Absolutely, we can do something. We deploy based on the information and intelligence that we have, and that's not to point fingers back towards the community, far from it. But what I'm trying to say is that for us to be able, at most effective, we need to know where the issues are and when. So if you're happy to, either yourself or colleagues, to contact me, I think my email address is fairly known amongst, I think you should be able to contact, I think we've spoken before, I think, via email from memory. If you contact me with when and where, and I can certainly facilitate some activity in relation to that. But as I say, we're very dependent on the community telling us where their issues are and when, particularly with speeding, because it sometimes changes dependent on the time of day, the day of the week, and specifically the certain locations. So we would look to try and maximise how we would deploy our officers. But yeah, if you can let us know, that would be perfect. Thank you.
That's great. Obviously, yeah, it'd be nice to do it. It's all about road safety, and obviously going on earlier on, we had the road safety bit on there, and it's teaching people earlier about road safety. And again, even if we could do something on that line, it would be great. I'm looking at the fire bike course you actually put up on there. I'm a biker. I think that course is the most amazing thing going. So, and that should be pushed more well, county wide, and get us bikers out there doing the courses. I've done all of them. So again, road safety and courses or anything we can give has got to be good.
Councillor Sam, can I just ask, does anybody else want to speak or ask questions? Councillor.
Mine's just really supporting what Linda said, because I think your team came out to our St Lawrence meeting, and I think it was, forgive me if I've got his name wrong, I think it was Matt Dolby and his two supporting officers. I don't know if they were PCOs, I can't remember now. PCOs, I think. And they were brilliant, but the speeding issue was raised there, and we were told, unless I'm dreaming this, that it wasn't going to, they couldn't do that. We had to go via Maldon to try and get the Maldon team in, because you wouldn't do that. And I always think of you when it comes to roads, because you've been one of the most effective officers I've ever known to do with speeding. And one of my questions is, how big is your team now? Because many years ago, when you did fantastic work around here, and if we notice our accidents, and you said it in your presentations, have crept up significantly. That Lower Burnham Road, 3 accidents over weekends we're having all the time, whereas you and your team were brilliant. I think we had a local guy who lived round, and he always parked his bike locally because he lived locally. So we were actually very, very lucky to have him, and we really appreciated when he attended. But I know that your team was absolutely hammered and moved away. So this is why now we're back in the position we were many years ago, before your guys worked really hard. But the main point that I was going to speak, because I was going to come to Adam Pipe later, was that we were told you wouldn't do it for us, because I'm on the LHP, because I'm an Essex County Councillor, and we have been trying since I've been elected, 3 years now, to get some of these speeding issues on our country roads addressed. And every time we try to put it through a panel or something to do with county highways, we are told we can't do it because it doesn't fit the national criteria to reduce the speed. So we're now working within that. We can't change that speed limit because it's a national law or whatever, because you've got so many houses of a distance or whatever criteria they always throw at us to say we are not going to reduce your speed from 60 to 50 to 40 or 40 to 30, whatever. I think we've managed to change one of them. So I want to back up Linda and everybody else on the Dengie, which goes out to Bradwell, Tillingham, St Lawrence, Steeple, Ashildon, Burnham, Southminster, Althorne. The B1010 is an absolute nightmare. And Latchington, because we can't seem to get anywhere. So please, you don't want us all emailing you. So if you can actually take this and try and come back to us as a district or our areas, that would be fantastic to save us all emailing you.
Thank you, Councillor. First of all, I don't mind you emailing me. I'm quite happy for people to email me if they've got issues. So you'd be surprised how many I get. But anyway, we digress. What I would say is, obviously, I wasn't there for the meeting, so I can't personally say what was said or promised. What I can say is that you've seen the numbers of officers on my team here, and they are, a relatively small team for the area that they police, and what we ask of them, because they don't just deal with speeding, they deal with the multitude of different challenges that we have from a policing perspective around crime and ASB. So that's why when it comes to speeding, yes, we do, and I've shown that we do enforcement, and I know we've done enforcement because I'm aware of it through speaking to Matt and the team already. What we do, though, is we ask for the support of colleagues and partners from other departments when we can't get to areas everywhere that we would like to be, because we are a small team, and they do have to prioritise what they do. That's not to say that we can't and shouldn't get to where we need to be in regards to the areas that you've described, and I do ask and invite that contact from yourselves so that I can facilitate what we can do from a local perspective from the community policing team. But obviously conscious of the fact that there are times when we do need to rely on our partners within roads policing and other supportive departments within Essex Police or from Maldon District Council, because we are a team of 6 officers with a significant amount.
I'm going to have to keep pursuing this because that's fine, and I take everything on board. I've been listening to that sort of conversation for many, many years. All we want to try and do is actually get it into the areas we're asking, whether you choose as an operational level that you've got to work with whoever. We don't mind. Always saying as elected members, we've got serious, well, we think we're serious issues of speeding. We just want to know, can you do it, will you do it, and when will you do it? And we will do everything we can to help and support you. I'm not hammering you, we're trying to find out if we can get that speeding element reduced. It is a serious problem. Thank you.
Do you want to come in?
So probably got some glimmers of hope. So the PFCC has given me a sum of money from the Home Office from ASB funding, which is going to be focused on ASB roads. That's going to start next month, and St Lawrence and Wickham Bishops at the moment sit on the list of communities that are going to be looked at. We can take more communities at the moment. We're going to be 30 communities. I've got about 20 on the list. There'll be 7 months of activity where what we're intending to do is evidence the extent of the problem on day 1, when we've got that data. And then over the 7 months, we'll have a community contact, and we will be telling you every time we're coming and what the results are. And at the end of the 7 months, we'll try and see what outcome, what benefit it's been for our activity. So St Lawrence is on there. I'm very happy to put some more locations that maybe after tomorrow's meeting around the Lower Burnham Road, we'll put some others on there as well. Speed limits will be changing. The new Essex County Council Speed Management Strategy will be published later this year. And when I get onto my presentation, Vision Zero has 5 layers of protection. One is around speed limits, and it's not all in speed. And what you'll find is the Highway Code now reflects that vulnerable road users are given greater protection than car drivers. So it's likely for our rural roads, which are used by motorcyclists, cyclists, pedestrians, horse riders, that de-restricted roads will come down to 50, and you'll see some 40s come down to 30. That's great, but it does give us challenges. But it's likely everything that's in our current speed management strategy that's published by the County Council will change. It's being written at the moment. So I'll go on to my presentation in a sec, but what I will say, and Richard knows this, and as elected members, you have a big part to play in this for Section 106 money. All this development across the Dengie and this district, you cannot keep carrying on building houses and new roads and not expecting the pressure to be taken off of us and put back onto developers to put things on the ground that permanently could make a solution. Average speed systems give us total compliance. And when you start considering all these big developments that are going on, you've got to start looking at what developers are going to contribute to put average systems into communities that are impacted around by the developments. And
You're preaching to the converted here.
Well, I would hope so, and I know I'm going to be talking to Richard about the next stages across the Dengie. But probably in my presentation we'll probably cover some other bits that will have spark debate.
Indeed, members' time marches on, so I think if we could...
How long have I got, just so I don't want to...
We've got enough time for that.
Okay.
But anyway, so first I'd like to thank Chief Inspector Ballard for his presentation and ask Mr Pipe from Safer Essex Roads Partnership to give us the update.
Start from Essex, please.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. No problem. So, yeah, if you don't know, I'm Adam Pipe. I'm the Head of Roads Policing or Traffic Policing for Old Money. We're from Operational Policing Command. So just to give you a bit of an idea, because we're one of those departments that does support the local policing area around here, about 700 officers and staff from Operational Policing Command. And apart from roads policing, we've got armed response, dogs, marine section, serious violence unit, operational support group, Stansted Airport, which is obviously funded by the MAG Airport Group, and the drones team. And the operational support group probably give the most support to the LPA North. They do daily arrests for people that are wanted for rape. other high harm offences. So they give a lot of support to the local LPA. So that's who I am. Next one, please, Paul. So just to give you a bit of an update, and some of you may have seen this before, but just the top one really, I've got 2 operational road policing bases in Essex, one based at Chigwell on the M11 and one based at Stanway. 86 PCs. If I tell you that 20 years ago we would have had over 300, and 25 sergeants I would have had then. So 86 PC, 12 sergeants and 2 inspectors. So, but if you just think about the geographical areas that they cover, so Chigwell cover from the M11 Junction 8 all the way across to Southend, including Brentwood, Basildon, Thurrock, Epping Forest, all round there, and Harlow. Split 86 by 2 to give you 43 at each base. Split that by the number of shifts. At any one time, there'll be 1 and 7 PCs within the roads policing team. 1 and 7. There aren't many days where there are 1 and 7. At best, we could be 1 and 5, 1 and 4. So that is the operational response, 24/7 cover for policing our roads. I do have a proactive team based at Salford and Ferris. That's the team that Councillor Stamp refers to. 1 inspector, 3 sergeants, 16 PCs that do the proactive work. So they're focusing on KSIs. One of the big things for roads policing, it's not all about road safety. Lots of what we've been talking about this evening. Criminals use the roads, whether it's a burglar, whether it's someone wanted for domestic violence, whether it's a rapist, whether it's a drug deal, or someone bringing knives into the county. I call the roads our arteries of harm, because actually our arteries spread out from London. We've got a fantastic road network around London. All that does, it just allows criminality to access our road network. So that team not only look at proactive KSI work, so reducing the threat of harm on the roads, but also looking to disrupt travelling criminality, which at the moment, vehicle crime is a massive issue in Essex. It's gone up by 18%, and a lot of their time actually is now taken up with disrupting vehicle crime. And as effective any time now, Stanway will be closing, so will Salford and Ferris, and those proactive teams and staff will be moving to our main base at Boreham, which actually will benefit Maldon and Chelmsford and this Dengie area, because when they move south, they naturally stay closer to these areas. So at the moment, Stanway base, the Colchester area gets a lot more of attention. So yes, the South Woodham team will be coming across to Boreham, but by the focus of Stanway moving to Boreham, there will be a better coverage. We've got a dedicated commercial vehicle unit that look at commercial vehicles, particularly around illegal immigration crime, smuggling of people in the back of lorries. And then we've got a serious collision investigation unit which investigate our fatal road traffic collisions with 15 detectives, 3 DSS and DI. And tragically last night we had a fatal over in Braintree, which gives us 4 people have been killed this year in a road traffic collision. And then I've got now 3, this is different, this is new. So we've got 3 members of police staff which are dedicated to do speed enforcement. So Councillor Stamp, this is something we didn't have a few years ago, but we now have them in post, and they are coming out to communities in the LPA North in particular, and the South, with dedicated, and doing a lot around our community speed watch groups. So they're still quite new, they're finding their way around, but they're coming out with TrueCam. They're making appointments of community speed watch groups to work alongside them, and they're quite visual on our social media posts, so they can easily come out to places like Mayland and St Lawrence and Althorn in the future. And they do work also alongside the community protection officers here with their TrueCam. So that's brand new, that's all they do is speed signs. Next one, please, Paul. So just to give you an idea of the sorts of activity, obviously this is very much county-wide, but gives you a real feeling, because whatever we do on the whole road network will influence what happens in Maldon. So 2,235 offences of mobile phones we detected last year. That's still a growing number, because up until last year, the legislation, there was a loophole in the legislation basically, and a member of the public took their case to court and won, so policing was not able to enforce mobile phone offences, but we can now. Since last March, so that's back on the up. 4,200 seatbelts, excess speeds, this is where officers are present at the roadside, not a speed camera, over 5,000, but this is the number of speed camera offences, 140,000 we deal with a year. We're processing about 15,000 notice of intent of prosecutions each month for speed and other offences. 16,500 court allocations for minor traffic. We refer about 70,000 people onto NDORS courses. That's one of the educational courses that are now available to drivers that offend at the lower end. Arrest over 1,000 people last year for drug driving. Drug driving is without doubt the biggest risk to road safety for many decades. 1 in 3 of our fatals will have the presence of cocaine or cannabis in either the person that's died or a vehicle that's involved in a collision. We're arresting about 100 people a month. The true figure is when we had COVID, because when we had COVID, the people that were using the roads shouldn't have been using the roads, and we're arresting over 300 people a month for drug driving. So that is the true benchmark. It is an absolute mind blower as to what's out there. Drink driving, 1,000, 1,200 people. I'm sad to say we're not even at the tip of the iceberg with arresting this. There are so many people drink driving. It's something, I'm not saying we're losing the battle, but it's scary what's out there. And we've seized over 1,000 vehicles a year for no insurance. So that just gives you a feeling and a flavour. So when we hear people saying that we don't police the roads, we have got small numbers, but that's a fair bit of activity we're doing. Yeah. Next one, please, Paul. So there you can see last year it's sadly an ever upward trend at the moment. 891 people killed and seriously injured, 43 people killed last year. We didn't have anyone killed in January, but we've had 4 so far in February. And, you know, as we spoke right at the earlier part, you know, we've got to get to understand these are unlawful killings. In most cases, there is now a life-term tariff. If you kill someone for dangerous driving through aggravated through drink or drugs, it's life in prison. And there's a new offence of causing serious injury through careless driving, which gives you 2 years in prison. So, and I can tell you every one of those 43, there'll be a tragic story behind them. They leave behind untold misery for family, friends and work colleagues. And sadly, it takes about 4 years to get to court for some of these at the moment. So, you know, it leaves a lot of misery for people until the court case. So, sadly, we're not necessarily going the right way, and those figures would be replicated across the country at the moment. Next one. There we are for Maldon. I haven't put 2023 on there at the moment because the figures haven't been validated, but you can see there in 2022. Now, what you said earlier about the dingy, I'm absolutely confident that Maldon is going to be higher than we were last year, and I've already spoken to colleagues at the County Council because I think what we're seeing across the Dingy Peninsula at the moment is reflective that the road network just cannot cope with what the current traffic levels are like. And you're absolutely right. So anecdotally, I feel that the Dingy and all of that area is going to have pushed Maldon way above where we were in 2022. So we'll see where we will have the final figures very shortly. Next one, please, Paul. So it doesn't come out that well, but that's a little heat source map that was done for me by my colleagues at County Council. So the brighter the intensity of the colour gives you the higher density of where the collisions are happening. So you can probably clearly pick out, although you can't see the roads that well on there, you can probably clearly pick out some of the routes, particularly the Lower Burnham Road and the roads out to Bradwell on Sea, Fanbridge Road, I can clearly pick out on there, but then you've got the concentration of Maldon. So that just really, that's taken over 5 years of data. Next one, Paul. This is an interesting one. So this is 5 years. So every time you have a road traffic collision and it's recorded, we have to do what they call a Stats 19 form for the government, which is the causation factors for each of how the collisions occurred. So you can see the top one is around the main primary cause for collisions is observational, distraction, it could be mobile phone, or just failing to not look properly. You'll see the second one is speed. So when people say that speed's not a factor in collisions, there you go. And then you come down, you can probably also see the orange one is the environmental highway. So that could be potholes, it could be slippery roads, something like that. And then you've got some impaired driving coming a little bit further down. So that's taken over 5 years, and we use that quite a bit. So some of those offences I just spoke about earlier about mobile phones, seatbelt, speed, what we call them is our fatal five, and you can see they're linked to some of the causation factors. Next one, please, Paul. So just a flavour of what we're out and about doing. So that is one of our 2 unmarked motorbikes. That picture was taken at Bradwell-on-Sea last summer when we heard that there was a new meet on Wednesday evenings. So one of our riders came down and did a number of Wednesdays to interact. So those are very effective bikes. They don't look like a police bike, but they've got really good blue lights. So we use them a lot, and they will be used again in the summer and the spring. Bottom one is one of our new speed enforcement officers, the police staff. The top right one is we use a heavy goods vehicle funded by National Highways to police the strategic roads every 6 weeks probably. So they provide us the lorry and we look for mobile phone offences, lorry drivers using their laptops or watching a video because when we're at the same level and we've got a video that we video the drivers we're going past. So we do a whole week of that on like the A12, M25, M11. And then the one with the helicopter, I've recently introduced that are road policing officers, and you can see we've now got reflective trousers, which our colleagues in other parts of policing take the mickey out of. But 7 road policing officers have been killed on the roads of Essex since 1970. It's an inherently difficult place to work, and that's why we give them extra protection. But we're now giving our road policing officers additional medical equipment, so they can apply like stem bleeding. We've got defibs on board and all that sort of stuff, just to try and get that critical care to someone as quickly as possible. So that's been provided by HEMS. Next one, please. So Vision Zero, this is the approach by 2040 for 0 road death and 0 serious injuries by 2040. It's an aspiration, and it's an aspiration that's being picked up by many police forces and local authorities across the country. Those are what we call the layers of protection. So those are things that we need to focus on and change if we're to work towards Vision Zero. Without doubt, one of the biggest things there will be the safe vehicles, because what you'll find over time is that vehicles are going to become autonomous. We know now that over the last 10 to 20 years, without doubt, the technology in cars and the safe systems in cars save people's lives. So by 2040, there's a very good chance that vehicles will just simply not crash anyway. And even now, with our police cars, we've got police cars in roads policing that don't want to do what we want them to do because of the safe systems in the car with Volvo. So they don't want to do tactical contact. So we have a job to box a car in, and they don't want to go the wrong side of a keep left bollard. And if you go to overtake on blue lights and traffic's coming towards you, stops, the car pulls you back in because it thinks it's going to have a crash. So that technology is already there. So cars and vehicles will definitely change. But safe speed is one of the biggest. Yes, we'll have to do more enforcement, but as I said earlier, it won't be enforcing the speed limits you currently see. It's likely we'll see more speed limits of 20 miles an hour in urban areas, reduction across rural roads, and it's the right thing to do, but it will present policing with some additional challenges. And safe roads and roadsides, that's what I talk about, where local authorities, whether it's the highway authority or district councils, will have responsibility to make sure that when you're planning, and my colleagues at County Hall are working with the planning officers, that Vision Zero, so designing out the possibility of a collision or accepting a collision will happen, but we reduce the severity by what you build into the road. So when they build a new A12, they'll be designing out those horrid junctions at Rivenhall and further along at Easthorpe and all those sorts of things. So they'll develop a network which is less giving. And if you do have a collision, rather than dying or being seriously injured, you might be a minor injury. That's the whole idea of it. So when you build a new housing estate, whether it's 200 houses or 1,000 houses, what are you doing to put in methods to mitigate risks to pedestrians, cyclists and car drivers? So that's the ideas of it. And obviously post-collision response, without doubt, the ability now for getting a helicopter to the scene of a fatal or near-fatal collision has absolutely changed the ability of surviving a road traffic collision. To think they now do operations at the roadside, heart massage, where they previously would have had to take someone into London Hospital. So that has also made a big change. So those are the 5 layers of protection we have to do in order to get seriously about working down towards Vision Zero. I think that could be the last one, or it might be another. So when you spoke about crime patterns and trends. So this is a free website, and it probably doesn't come out very well, the blue, and I will, no, you probably can't see it at all, actually. It's Crash Map. So for your own areas, if you ever want to go into www.crashmap.co.uk, it's a free mapping system, but it will show in your areas every single collision over the last 5 years. You can select by year, select by severity, and if you were to hover a cursor over each of those, it will give you when it happened, how it happened, etc., and the vehicles that are involved. So I know, so similar to your crime trends, that can also provide you some useful information. So look, this is very hurriedly put together because I didn't know I was coming here till Tuesday. So I've hurriedly put this together, but I'm very happy to take any questions you've got.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Councillor Spencer.
Thanks ever so much for that, Adam. So I really think, it's fantastic that you've got the Vision Zero campaign. Having been a reporter for a lot of my life, I really understand the impact behind every single road death. Going quickly to what you're saying about road design and Section 106 agreements, and I know because Adam lives 2 doors away from me, that he will appreciate what I'm about to say. I mean, we've got some terrible road design around the North Heybridge Garden suburb. In fact, I think you'd have to go a long way. I mean, the road that we know as the Mario Kart track, where you just need people throwing banana skins from the side to make it a complete. And I've had to deal very recently with Broad Street Green Road with a roundabout that actually Essex don't want to adopt yet because it's just not safe. The other problem that we've got, and this is something that I think we do need to look at this, members, with regard to planning policy and our LDP and the way we're moving forward. And Richard, I know, is very aware of this on Broad Street Green Road, which a huge part of it there is 40 miles an hour. So I do hope it's one of those that's going to come down to 30. But we'll soon have hundreds of school children walking down, and it's only on one side of the road, a very, very narrow pavement that you can't get a double buggy down to get to school. And I know that in the past that was an area where pedestrians were hurt. So I'm hoping that we don't return to those days. And I suppose from our point of view, it's really about finding that link between what you're saying to us now and how we look at bringing that about within our planning policy. And I think that's perhaps a bit of a joining up exercise that we've got to do. And also really how you guys work with highways would be a question for me to you, because looking at that road design and the lack of speed cameras that from SM106 or all of those things, but particularly the road design, how that happened really, and do Essex Highways work with you when it comes to a big development like the North Heybridge Garden suburb? Because obviously something's gone wrong, I think, there. So I'll leave that with you.
So they don't have to, but we've now got a new department in Essex Police within Strategic Change, which has been purposely set up to look at all large-scale planning applications, so that policing, whether it's designing out crime or designing out collisions, has an opportunity to talk. So we are able to put forward our concerns. Whether they listen to or not is another matter. But my colleagues from the Safe Essex Roads Partnership are working with colleagues at County Hall to make quite significant changes at a high level, which will then come down to make sure that that is included. Yeah, so for example, on that Heybridge Garden route, staggered junctions are just shouldn't be done these days. In fact, staggered junctions are taken out. There was one at Pellan's Corner on the A120, which people, there was this horrible term about you could put your mortgage on someone's going to get killed. They used to. And that's all because older drivers in particular cannot judge or have difficulty in judging the path of oncoming vehicles. So where you've got a staggered junction, they commit to the road to do the crossover and they get hit. I know there will be collisions at that staggered junction. And this is what went back to earlier. Policing, whether it's roads policing or in local policing, we have finite resources. Every time you build a new road or a new housing estate, it's additional, I hate to use the word burden, but it is on policing. Now, they've just junction 7A on the M11, beautiful new roundabout, but they've just created 2 dumbbells where now car cruisers race between 2 roundabouts. And we've had collisions up there, and we have loads of antisocial behaviour. If I'm there, I can't be doing what I should be doing of putting a drug wipe in people's mouths, or doing drink drivers, or going down to Thurrock where there'll be 1,000 cars on a Saturday night racing around Lakeside. So it just puts continuous, but if we can do things earlier, we can either design it out without any need for further police attention, which is like speed cameras or engineering schemes and that type of stuff.
Councillor, could I just allow Mr Holmes to step in there?
Thank you. I just want to comment, obviously, around sort of forward planning and looking at our plans going forward. And I think I'll make no comment about road design. That's not my area of expertise at all. However, I think when Adam and I discussed this before, we were already too late, well too late for 106 agreement. So quite determined this time round, as we start looking at our local plan, we're having these conversations, and I will invite Adam to talk to our planning policy guys, and I think obviously with your new team as well. So, it's never too early, and we need to have those conversations about your next local plan, so that you do get things like average speed cameras built in as part of a 106 agreement. And that's exactly what I think Adam was looking for. Too late, I think, now, but that's where we need to be going. So I will ensure those conversations happen.
Councillor Neil?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that you're looking at reducing speed limits. It's something that we've been battering our heads as a parish councillor as well for years in Bradwell. We've got a very mad situation if you're coming into Bradwell and going down to Waterside, down towards the yacht harbour. You go into a 30 past the garage, then you hit a 60 mile an hour or national speed limit with some two very small roads that connect to it, and then you're back into a 30 when you get into Waterside. As you said earlier, people bet their mortgages on there being accidents there. Obviously, we're rural, we have horses, we have people out on bikes, very, very small. I don't think you can get a single pushchair on the pavement there. So I'd be glad that if that is also sort of looked at, and that will help a lot of my residents there. But I'd also just like to thank you for coming to the bike meet that happens every single Wednesday at the moment. It has helped. Obviously, people that do turn up, the majority are very good, responsible bike owners and responsible car enthusiasts now, because it's expanded not just from bikes, but it's now cars. But there are always the issues of inconsiderate bike usage, and obviously we've linked up with the guys in Mayland to try and get you to almost do a staggered thing through the villages, because they're not just speeding in Bradwell, they're speeding all the way down from sort of Latchington all the way through. So if that can continue, that would be much appreciated from my point of view. Thank you.
Yeah, so the idea of this Operation Sidewalk, which is the ASB money, will be that we'll have a number of locations on a route, and then we'll have a number of officers at the same time operating on a like a loop around. So that is the intention of doing it.
Councillor Siddle-Norman?
Am I wrong in understanding that the highways do not consult you on a planning application on the roads?
No, because we're not a statutory consultee. Again, there is talk. The PFCC talks about that potentially changing in the future through legislative change. We are in the crime world for designing out crime. But when it comes to traffic, we're not. We are for like speed limits and things like that. We're a statutory consultee where it's a traffic regulation order, but on general planning, we're not.
I'm sorry. If I was on the highways and making decisions, you would be the first people I'd go and speak to.
Councillor Morley?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for coming. For someone who runs a haulage business, safety, you were saying about Rivenhall, the verges, as you hopefully have some sway with the Essex County highways, the verges are appalling in the hedges. 2 lorries now cannot pass down Braxted, Maypole Road. It wouldn't actually cost the council anything. I've only got to tell the landowner, 28 days, cut your hedge or else. But we've had mirrors hit and come in and shatter the drivers with glass. Really dangerous and quite frightening for them. And until you've experienced that, and with these foreign trucks using these rural roads as well, they can't judge their width very well. If you could have any sway with them, because I've been banging on about it for ages, but nothing's. I mean, that Rivenhall, that junction in particular, by the old motor inn.
Yeah, we do. So there's an example quite close by where we have had sway, which is the Langford Bridge. So where the developer took out all the hedging, we made 2 approaches to Essex County Council. First one, they put the little markers up, and then we contacted them just before Christmas and said it's unacceptable. Someone's going to go over the edge, and that's why they've put the higher and the speed limit. So we do have that sort of influence. I think, I was talking to colleagues at County Hall the other day, I think they've got 85,000 outstanding network issues on their website. So the website where you can go and identify a fault, whether it's a light, whether it's a pothole, they've got 85,000 items on there. We have definitely had 2 quite serious road traffic collisions involving quite serious injuries, which were pothole related in the last 2 months, both on motorcycles. I think everyone knows what the roads look like at the moment. Yeah, but I'll get colleagues to take a look. Yeah.
Because it is that halting to have a petrol.
Yeah, I'll get.
It's quite a bad one now. They're not with us, but 2 trucks and it smacked, literally showered the driver with cars.
Yeah.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. And just to add to that, I'm in quite long conversations at the moment with the MD of Headingham and Chambers Bus Company, and he's told me of a lot of incidents where overhanging branches have shattered the glass in buses, showering children and all passengers, and presumably frightening the driver a lot. I mean, you can't drive along while branches are crashing in through your windows. So to add to weight to that argument, that's happening, and they've spent a fortune. I can privately share with you how much they've spent. Thank you.
Councillor Sump.
Yeah, I think if anybody was sad enough to watch full council at Essex County Council meeting a week or 10 days ago, it was raised, all what you've said about hedges and potholes. I mean, there is we've just said, I think I've shared a press release with everybody as a county councillor, was it today or yesterday, about the figures, the actual figures, which is what Adam's just said regarding potholes, hedges, everything. And the majority of the inquiries that come through and complaints is always highway related. So they are aware and they are looking at supposedly making changes, but we've heard it so many times. Poor old Richard Holmes will have heard this so many times previously, but they are actually aware. But it's going to come down to funding. So hopefully the hedge situation, exactly, and that's the point. They need to be writing to the landowners, but it has been raised and they are supposed to be being more proactive.
They're obstructing the highway. If we did that, we'd be pulled up.
Yeah, but you've got to write to your county members. Not me all the time, you've got other ones. So write to your own county members and get them to raise it, because we raise it at all council meetings all the time. And I'm being serious there, you've got to put pressure on so it is actually, being addressed. And I'm amazed, I know damn well what you've just said about not being consulted. I know that with the road changes, we've had developments in Burnham. We have raised issues about the road, the way it's been designed. And I've gone, I won't mention the guy's name, but he cannot stand me because I send him so many emails. So that's why I don't want to get on your bad list and on everybody else's. But we tried to say that you're in breach of this regulation, and we got absolutely nowhere with them. They're very, very difficult to change their view, shall we say. I have to be careful because I'm a county councillor.
Send your lorry up, perhaps.
Right. Anything else? In which case,
Can I thank them? Can I thank them? And I also want to say to you, I'm not picking on you, but I would like to thank you all, because I'm not a member of this committee, but I always find this one really, really brilliant to attend. So thank you, Chairman, and allow me to speak.
So, yeah, let's take a bit of point. And, so move on to item 9. Any other item of business the chairperson of the committee decides are urgent, and I have none. So therefore, I close this meeting at 21:34.